Hey there folks, Wrel here. I'm a big fan of the branching narrative games, customization, skill progression. So games like Mass Effect or like Dragon Age, like Baldur's Gate 3, or all the Baldur's Gates, I guess. Also, I've been playing Dispatch lately. Totally unrelated to anything that we're going to talk about today, but it's very good. Well, it's very good. Anyway, when it comes to TTRPGs, I similarly want to feel like my characters have an arc, something that makes them evolve over time in terms of both the role play, but I also want to see it reflected in the gameplay mechanics. Instead of being relegated solely to flavor, I want your decisions to be meaningful so that you're making progress that matters. Full disclaimer, I'm the type of guy who doesn't optimize a D&D character because it's more fun for me to, frankly, feel as if I have ownership over my creativity. And when you're kind of shoved down this well-trodden optimal path, the agency is like wholly pulled away from you along with the fun. That said, I wanted to walk through how I attempt to address this lack of, I'll call it viable creativity in the TTRPG that I designed. If you're new here, I'm the sole author, editor, designer, creator of Distal, a D20 TTRPG focused on hardships, not heroes. You can get the game in the video description and so on and so forth. On its face, the lack of viable creativity might seem like a balance problem, but that's only half correct. If your goal is to give players true ownership over the decisions that they are making, you kind of have to know what kind of game you're creating. Draw Steel, for example, constrains the scope of the game to a mostly heroic combat simulator, so the classes that they design basically just get increasingly powerful ways to deal with the bad guys, because again, that's the real goal of the class progression as it relates to the game. There are other pillars and certainly other systems at play that help kind of smooth out the rough edges, but combat is really the cornerstone. D&D, on the other hand, tries to be something for everyone. Your subclass provides you flavor, but it locks you into it for the entirety of the class's progression. Feats and multiclassing give you the possibility of mechanical divergence, but there's a lot of opportunity cost for not continuing down your class level, just kind of going down the same route, or by not taking something that's flatly overpowered for low-level dips. Dipping one level into fighter for action surge is probably like the most egregious example. And this is essentially where we get to the kind of wishy-washy issue of making meaningful decisions. In Draw Steel, it's scoped down so much that the decisions aren't super reflective of the character's journey. And in D&D, the options are often so imbalanced that you're kind of deterred from translating your flavor into mechanics or doing some sort of mental gymnastics to make your decisions kind of make sense for your character. All that said, I'm a strong believer that you should be able to represent and reinforce your decisions mechanically, not just through the flavor. In Distal, you have 10 character levels. There's a fair amount of decision making at each step of the way, but the main one that I want to focus on are what we call class signatures. And you gain these at every third level, and again at level 10. At those levels, you make a decision from a short list, a few unique options that help represent focused shifts or changes in your character over time. I'll walk you through a class's progression just to kind of get a feel for it. Okie dokie. So let's get into the core rules PDF of Distal. Let's start with the Justicar. So the Justicar, we're really looking at a sort of paladin-like. They're more zealous, I would say, than a paladin, but that's the whole feel. That's the vibe. So for every class in Distal, right from level 1, we want you to know exactly what the fantasy is, the general fantasy that you're going to be pursuing through the life of this class, your evolution of the character. That doesn't mean that you are stuck in one specific trope. We create confines that you can interpret in many ways as you are moving through the class. But you know right from the outset that your Justicar is their understanding of religion and strategy. Okay, why are they understanding of religion and strategy? It's because they spent time around the church, or they spent time, under an oath or an authority that lends them this sort of understanding. And then at level 2, we kind of hammer that home. So if level 1 is just stepping into the idea that you've spent time moving toward this direction, like within your career, level 2 is saying like, oh, you are this thing now. Like let's take it for real. Now, when we move to level 3, this is where you start creating or making decisions for yourself. So let's say that you are a paladin. What kind of paladin are you? If you are a crusading one, you'd be like a very zealous, sort of paladin, right? So we have crusading Justicar, arbitrating Justicar, barricading Justicar, and what these represent are different interpretations for your class. So if you view your character as a sort of a lawbringer, the arbitrating Justicar plays a lot with its scales of justice ability. You get this up here at level 2, and just even the ability names are meant to push you toward the idea that you are this thing. So if you view yourself as a law bringer, then perhaps this is the interpretation that you take on. For this crusading Justicar, you're more zealous. So that interceptability, instead of repositioning next to your ally to take a blow, you can instead of reposition next to an enemy. So maybe you, by virtue of trying to sell that zealous nature of your class, your fervor behind your religion or whatever, you want to drive toward the enemy, a crusader, and kind of get in their face. So this is an example of how you can kind of divert the class's original intent into something that is fitting of the place that you are in the world. So if you started out just as some pious sort of maybe like a clergyman or somebody who worked outside the church just as a guard and that sort of thing, but you became worthy enough to become to honor these sorts of edicts and gain this power through service, then that service might later be represented as like a zealous devotion. And then at level 4, you move into we play with some like downtime stuff. This is a pretty common thread. Downtime is something that occurs often, and we expand upon abilities and that sort of thing. By level 5, we tend to give you something we give you like a baseline ability, and then it tends to get modified again once you hit level 6, and then choose how you want to reflect that differently. So if level 5 is like, okay, you learn Castigate, it's kind of like neutral. You already know that you have these sorts of powers, and regardless of the decisions that you're making, you're never losing anything because the class itself is solid from start to finish. And that is one of the things that is lacking in D&D, where you have to divert resources, be that like a level, over to a different class to reflect some sort of aspect of that of your character's arc. So if you are, let's go down this path and say like, okay, you're just a super zealous sort of paladin, and you're honoring a god, and you believe it's very much your way or the highway. Everything here will totally continue to make sense. This is very kind of neutral for the class fantasy, and you choose another class signature. So what best reflects what your zealous paladin is doing? Are they smiting evil? Like are they using their fervor to banish or to destroy like heretical religions, or maybe demons, yada yada. So maybe they're more like offensive, so smiting Justicar. They have these armaments of blazing light. Or maybe they are meant to like bolster, encourage everyone around them, because they're like, even if they are like zealous in their fervor, maybe they've kind of like walked away from that as you've like, they don't have to, but as you've kind of started to develop your story, maybe you've lost some of that fanaticism because you've gained camaraderie with your allies, and you take it upon yourself to inspire them. So we have a lot of these different ways that you can take the class. And again, this happens every 3 levels. So you move on to level 7, and then you learn some other stuff. Again, these are pretty neutral. And level 8, same thing. We actually expand on some of your abilities earlier. So for example, intercept can now be used against targets nearby, so 15 feet instead of 10 feet away, which again plays into other abilities that you might have already. So for example, now you can jump in front of an enemy that's 15 feet away instead of an ally that's 15 feet away. So we tend to give you abilities and then build on that so that you're not overloaded with just so much stuff unless you're opting into more stuff. So, and that's another thing too, is that we give you kind of release valves for things that you want to keep track of, or if you don't want to keep track of. So some classes will get more abilities, and other classes they'll tend to have so for example here, take heart is an action. And but if you don't want to keep track of okay, I have another ability that I can use, you can just have this sort of stuff that gives you more passive benefits. Let's see. So if I move into this one, so this is the penultimate signature, because level 9, level 10 has its own stuff going on, but we'll get to that in a bit. If you were a paladin, so at level 9 you've been playing for a while, probably like a year at this point. So what trials and tribulations has your paladin undergone? Maybe they were once so fervorous about their religion, and then their religion is shattered. Maybe they once had allies. Maybe their allies have died out over time or left the party for one reason or another. You might be the kind of Justicar who loses your faith entirely. So maybe you're a falling Justicar. Maybe you become an anti-paladin. So any sort of solar damage that you may have been able to do in the past is out, like spirit damage, any fire damage, maybe cold damage. So you're contorting your identity because you don't view the world the same way. Your powers don't manifest with the same spark that they used to. We know that through your life as an adventurer, it is meant to be a difficult one, and you will continue to surmount increasingly difficult challenges as time passes. And because of that, we know, or at least we hope, that you will have hardships that are reflected in your character, scars that you can't get rid of. So we give you the option of, in many cases, to kind of lean on that aspect of your character. So if you used to be this just this beacon of hope, but now that hope is no longer, we want to give you an option so that you can help role play and also breathe mechanics into that side of your character. So Maleficant, again, as an example, maligned attributes, so kind of permanent scars, give you more magic. And then you restore invocations magic when allies accrue death marks. So when your allies fall over and they're on consecrated ground, it actually gives you spells back so that you can help them, or maybe so that you can hurt enemies. So these sorts of changes over time are able to help you reflect your evolving character as it continues through its paces. Okay, and then we have level 10. So one of the cool things about level 10 is that you actually get to go back and then pick another signature from level 3 or level 6. And so if you got something that was mechanically appealing, or overlooked something that was mechanically appealing at level 10, then you can go back and figure something that suits your character for this power level, and then even you can translate it to the story as well. Maybe you've at level 10 you've refound your hope, and despite having been fallen, you understand that blah 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 blah. there's some sort of hope that is left in the world and is worth defending, that sort of thing. So maybe you become this uplifting Justicar, and you can also, this is just flavor in terms of the ability names and of the signature names, but they also don't need to be the thing that is that you are that's not the way that you need to interpret them. For example, if you take heart, that might just be you having a really stern personality, and you're forcing everyone to act at their best because they know that you're watching. All right. So that's an example of how these classes kind of work over time. And hopefully I've done a good job kind of conveying the shifts that occur. And then on top of that, the other thing that I want to talk about, and I'll try to keep this kind of quick, is that at every second level, so even right here, at level 2, you're given what is essentially a feat. We call it a distinction. So let's say instead of the traditional paladin, your heavy armored sword and shield sort of situation, I want to play a Justicar like a monk. Monk in the sense that you're maybe like a Buddhist monk sort of feeling, hand-to-hand combat. Maybe they have a spiritual side of them, but they're still very disciplined. So the ways that I can do that is I can make a dexterity-based character that would be totally fine, and maybe I take dodge. So as an instinct, weapon attacks made against me before the start of the next turn are untrained. So an instinct is like a bonus action. Untrained just means that attacks against you have a flat -2 when they roll on the dice. When I'm using my intercept ability, if I'm stepping in front of allied attacks and dodge is active, it'll be a lower chance to hit me. So instead of having to wear heavy armor, I can instead go this route and wear light armor and get the benefits that come from doing that sort of thing. While still, and also kind of bring home this concept of playing a monk. Another fun spin on this might be like, okay, if you are an assassin of the church, rather employed by the church to be an assassin, right? For other maybe religious figures or like competing religions, that sort of thing. You could totally make that work too. So you can be the Justicar, or you could be Cut Purse, which would be like our thief class. But if that didn't make sense, and I don't think it does, because the fantasy isn't quite there, you can be the Justicar, who is the religious, faith-driven, but also still be using weapons that allow you to, or weapons in ways that allow you to be stealthy and hidden and that sort of thing. So if you take the elusive distinction after getting expert in stealth, which is very achievable, weapons you wield don't reveal you when striking from hidden or invisible. So typically anybody can go hidden, but it's an action. Cut Purse can do it as an instinct, or if you get a second level distinction here, you gain the ability to hide as an instinct as well. So you can definitely angle yourself toward this sort of religious, zealous executioner if you wanted to. So you could strike, remain hidden in the shadows, strike again, gain the benefits of whatever weapons you're using. So the last thing that I wanted to show you is that there are these distinctions that have interplay with death marks specifically. So if you have at least one death mark, you can use your distinction. So you get, again, at every second level, to pick up like Battle Scarred, for example. Dying no longer depletes all willpower die, and you instead lose one willpower die at the start of your turns. What this means is that when you're dying, so when you fall over, typically that wipes all your willpower, and willpower is a resource that allows you to roll another die on top of your attacks, or it allows you to roll another die on top of essentially saving throws, that sort of thing. So instead of losing all that, you'll slowly leak it over time. So that's one that kind of reflects, okay, so you've been down this route before, and you're just good at taking a punch, or being knocked on the ground isn't as daunting as it used to be. Maybe you go a different direction and say like, okay, after getting having a near-death experience, maybe you now have the uncanny ability to speak with undead creatures. So undead creatures understand you when you speak, but doing so poisons you this shift. So you can totally talk to the undead, except you become poisoned when doing so. So vile tongue. And let's see, if you were to take it again, this distinction, bump it up to the second level here, while you're muted, which means typically you can't speak, vile tongue may be used to cast a spell, but you also take racking, which is a type of damage equal to your health die. So every class or every character in the game has a health die. So even if you're muted, you can have these undead, maybe demonic utterances that will still allow you to cast your spell, because every spell has a verbal component, and but you do so at a cost. So there's like some interesting things that you can do from the story ideal that you have had this experience with near death, and it has forever changed you. So through distinctions and through the class signatures, what we do is give you options to play the character that you want to play within the confines of the fantasy that the class is evoking, because that's somewhat specific, and it's going to draw you toward it over time. But at the same time, it's not so specific that you're locked into, like, you can only exist as one thing. You can be so much in Distal and maintain an arc that evolves as your character does, however you see your character moving through the world, and eventually they become what they become. Well, that was a whole lot. If this video has been interesting, helpful, or entertaining, please feel free to like, subscribe, tell your friends about the channel. But more importantly, if you want to play Distal, you can do that. It's in the video description. It's, again, something that I solo developed. I worked really hard on it. So if you have an interest in picking it up, please do that. Please and thank you. Thanks very much, folks. We're all signing off.